Imagine my shock when I found out my father disowned me through a Facebook post. My name is Emma Peterson Collins. I'm 36 years old, a certified public accountant, a wife, and a mother of two. He posted it at exactly 11 p.m. By the time I woke up the next morning, it was everywhere. My in-laws had seen it. My children's teachers had seen it. Every single member, yes, all 800 of our church, Infinite Blessings Fellowship, had seen it. My phone didn't stop ringing for a week. My 7-year-old daughter came home crying because a classmate told her, "Your mommy got kicked out of her family." And the worst part? The post never said why. It just said that I had brought shame to the Peterson name, and that no one should contact me on their behalf. That was it. No explanation, no context. So the town did what small towns do best. They filled in the blanks. But here's what my father didn't know. While I was falling apart, my husband David was sitting at our kitchen table every night after I went to bed, quietly pulling public records. And what he found about a charity, a dead company, and that almost $200,000 had vanished changed everything. What he did with that information at my father's own charity gala, even Dad never saw coming. But before I take you there, if you like the premise of the story, take a second to like and subscribe. And if you're listening right now, drop a comment with where you're from and your local time. I'd love to know who's here with me. Now, let me take you back 5 weeks earlier. A quiet Sunday afternoon. It started with a phone call from my mother. You need to understand our town in Virginia to understand my father. It's the kind of place where people know your last name before your first, where who you sit with at church on Sunday says more about you than your tax return. And in that town, Peterson wasn't just a name, it was currency. And for the past 15 years, he had been the executive director of the Peterson Family Foundation, a tax-exempt nonprofit that gave scholarships to underprivileged students. That foundation, that was his crown jewel. Every year at the annual gala, he would stand on stage in a perfectly tailored suit, his Rolex catching the light just right, and talk about legacy generosity giving back. People would cry, and then they would write checks. He drove a black Lexus RX, always parked in the first spot in the church lot, not because it was reserved, but because no one would dare take it. People called him Mr. Peterson even at the grocery store. He shook hands with both of his firm grip, controlled pressure. The kind politicians use, polished on the surface, calculated underneath. And here's what you need to know about Thomas Peterson as a father. He believed in hierarchy. Men lead, women support. Sons carry the name forward. Daughters were something he never quite figured out what to do with. Everyone in town believed Thomas Peterson was the finest man they knew, generous, principled. Everyone was wrong. I grew up in the shadow of the sun my father always wished had come first. Brandon, my younger brother, is 29 now. 5 years behind me in age and a lifetime ahead of me in my father's eyes. When Brandon graduated high school with average grades, no honors dad paid his full tuition at state for a business degree. When I graduated 2 years earlier summa cum laude, full academic load, working part-time at a tax office, Dad offered me a loan, not a gift, a loan with interest, written and documented. It took me 8 years to pay it off, and I never once brought it up at family dinners, not once. Brandon got a job at Interstate Bank right out of college, not because he earned it, because Dad made a call. He sat one cubicle away from Dad's corner office, and everyone on that floor knew exactly why he was there. Me, I passed the CPA exam on my first try. I got hired at Henderson and Shaw, a small accounting firm in town. When I told Dad, there was a pause on the line. Then he said, "Accounting? That's just counting other people's money, sweetheart." When I married David, a mechanical engineer at Mitchell Engineering, steady, smart, dependable Dad pulled me aside at the rehearsal dinner and said, "Well, at least you found someone willing." He said it like he was being generous. David heard him. He didn't say anything that night, but I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers gripped his watch strap just a little too hard before he took it off. Still, I kept trying. I called Dad every Sunday, brought the kids over for holidays, helped set up chairs for church fundraisers. For 34 years, I tried to be the daughter he wanted. I just didn't realize he never wanted a daughter at all. It started with a phone call, early March, a Sunday afternoon. I was folding laundry when my mom, Julia, called. Her voice was soft the way it always got when Dad wasn't in the room. "Emma, honey, the gala's coming up in a few weeks, and I need help pulling together the financial reports for the board." A small pause, "Could you come by? You're so much better at this than I am." I said yes without thinking. That was my pattern. Mom asks, I show up. I drove over that afternoon while Dad was at the golf course. The Lexus wasn't in the driveway, and I remember feeling a small, almost guilty sense of relief. Mom led me into his home office. The inner sanctum, dark oak desk, leather chair, brass lamp. Framed photos lined the shelves, Dad shaking hands with the governor. Dad receiving awards, Dad being admired. The whole room smelled like furniture polish and self-importance. She handed me 2 file boxes and opened her laptop to an Excel spreadsheet. "These are the past 2 years of foundation expenses," she said. "I just need everything organized before Mr. Taylor and the board review it." I sat down and got to work. Vendor payments, facility rentals, scholarship disbursements, printing costs, normal, clean, routine, until my fingers stopped on the keyboard. There it was. One line buried among dozens. Atlas Global Consulting Group, $14,200. No contract reference. No project description. Just 2 words, consulting fee. I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But something about it, the number 2 round. Too clean. Too quiet. Tucked between legitimate expenses like it was trying not to be seen. Like a forged signature hidden in a stack of real ones made the CPA and me go very, very still. I told myself it was probably nothing. Dad had been running the foundation for 15 years. Consultants come and go. Maybe Atlas Global handled strategic planning. Donor outreach, something I just wasn't aware of. But then I kept scrolling. Atlas Global Consulting Group, $7,500. March of the previous year. Same vague label. Consulting fee, no deliverables, no documentation. I scrolled again. $9,400, $8,200, $6,300, 6 payments. 2 years, just under $50,000, all to the same vendor, all labeled the same way, all invisible. I pulled up the other vendors. More printing clean records, line items, quantities, invoice numbers. Precision Events Company, same thing, detailed, professional, accountable. Exactly what a well-run nonprofit should look like. Atlas Global, nothing, no contract, no breakdown, no paper trail. It was the only vendor in the entire system that existed without evidence. I took out my phone and started taking screenshots. 1, 2, 3, all 6 entries. I didn't even fully know why. Maybe it was professional instinct, or maybe it was something deeper, the part of me that had spent 11 years reconciling books that knew the difference between a mistake and a pattern. I told myself I'd ask Dad about it. Casually, just to understand. This was his foundation, his life's work. There had to be a reasonable explanation. There had to be. I didn't know then that those screenshots would become the first pieces of evidence in a war I didn't even realize I'd stepped into. I called him the next evening. After the kids were in bed, I kept my voice light. Easy, careful, the way you speak when you already suspect something's wrong but you're still hoping you're mistaken. "Hey, Dad." I was helping Mom organize the foundation files, and I noticed a few payments to a vendor called Atlas Global Consulting Group. I couldn't find a contract in the records. Just want to make sure everything's tidy before the board review. Silence. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then his voice came through. And it was the voice I'd known my entire life, the one he used when I stepped too close to something I wasn't supposed to touch. Cold, controlled. "When exactly did I ask you to audit my foundation, Emma?" "You didn't, Dad. Mom just asked me to organize." "I know what your mother asked," he cut in, sharp. "And I'm telling you right now, you are an accountant at a strip mall firm. Don't confuse that with being qualified to question my foundation." The words landed exactly the way he intended, like a door slamming shut. Hard, something small and familiar curled up in my chest. I was 8 years old again, standing at the edge of the dining room being told to go play because the adults were talking. "Don't touch those files again," he said. "Give everything back to your mother, and do not discuss this with anyone. Are we clear?" "Yes, Dad." I hung up, and just sat there on the edge of the bed, my phone still warm in my hand. David walked in from the bathroom, toothbrush in hand. He looked at my face and didn't ask a single question. He just sat down beside me, and then right before the call had ended I remembered something. Faint, barely noticeable, but unmistakable, Dad's voice shifting. Not talking to me anymore, talking to someone else in the room. 3 words, clipped, urgent. "We have a problem." Over the next 2 weeks, the temperature around me didn't just drop, it collapsed. Brandon called first, but it wasn't really my brother on the phone, not the one I grew up with. His voice was sharper, harder, borrowed. Dad told me you've been snooping through foundation records. A pause. What exactly are you trying to do, Emma? Another pause. Destroy this family? I wasn't snooping, I said. Mom asked me to just stay out of it, he snapped. You don't understand how things work. And then he hung up. Aunt Lisa canceled our Saturday lunch, no explanation, just one text, something came up. Rain check, she never rescheduled. But it was Mom was the one that scared me. She stopped answering my calls. At first her texts were warm, then shorter, then nothing. Busy today, talk later. Then silence. I could see the read receipts. She was opening every message. She just wasn't replying. It took me a few days to understand what was happening. Dad was getting ahead of me. He was moving first. I pieced it together in fragments. A cousin's awkward pause on the phone, a church friend who suddenly wasn't available for coffee, conversations that ended too quickly, voices that sounded careful. Thomas Peterson wasn't lashing out. He was positioning himself, walking through his circle with a measured, wounded expression, telling people his daughter was going through something, that I was confused, unstable, paranoid, that he was worried about me. He wasn't angry. He was performing grief, and people believed him. One night after the kids were asleep, I told David everything. The canceled plans, the silence, the way the air around me felt different. He listened. Quiet, focused. Then he said something I didn't fully understand at the time. Your dad's not upset, Emma. He's strategic. There's a difference. He was right. We just didn't realize yet that the strategy was only halfway finished. 2 days later, Dad called. Come by after work, he said. We should talk. I went alone. David offered to come, but something told me this was the kind of conversation my father only had when there were no witnesses. The living room was staged like a courtroom. Dad sat in his high-backed leather chair under the brass reading lamp like a judge on a throne. Brandon sat across from him, legs crossed, arms folded, already decided. The Tiffany lamp beside them cast a warm golden light, making everything look important, respectable, untouchable. Mom wasn't there. I could hear her in the kitchen cabinets opening, water running, but she never came out. My eyes drifted to the mantel. The family portrait, taken 3 Christmases ago, had been moved, shifted to the edge, half hidden behind a candlestick. Dad didn't stand. He just looked at me. This is my family, he said. That foundation is my legacy. A pause. You will not say a single word about what you think you saw, to anyone, ever. Do you understand? Dad, if there's nothing wrong, then why? Because I said so. He leaned forward slightly. I'm giving you an opportunity, Emma. A beat. A last one. Brandon finally spoke. Just drop it, Emma. You're embarrassing yourself. I stood there for a long moment, long enough to feel something shift inside me, and then I said something I hadn't planned. I didn't say I was going to tell anyone, Dad. A breath. I asked you a question. Silence. The fact that you can't answer it, I met his eyes. Tells me everything. No one spoke. I turned, walked to the door, and left. My hands were shaking the entire drive home. I gripped the steering wheel of my old Honda Accord so tightly my knuckles turned white. And I truly didn't know that in 72 hours my father was going to go nuclear. Monday morning, 6:45 a.m. I was pouring coffee, packing Chloe's lunch, yelling at Liam to find his left shoe. Normal.